live now.
Well, good evening, and welcome to today's recurring TELx Council meeting. Short introduction as always. These meetings serve several critical functions for our governance and community. That is, provide governance transparency, create structure for our forum, allow authors to present proposals to the council and the community, and enable both council and community to review, debate, and refinement of proposals to reach consensus, share regular TELx ecosystem updates, ensure consistent communication between council and community, and facilitate direct community through a Q&A with council members. The TELx Council is a local governance organization with authority over TELx operational rules, system health, and social well-being. Its responsibilities include accepting, developing, and voting on TELx IPs, implementing changes or introducing new elements to TELx, altering TELx harvesting rules, and representing constituency interests in TELx matters. The duties of the council is required to plan, finance, and coordinate implementation of improvement steps, regulate TEL issuance to enable harvesting by liquidity miners, introduce, alter, and enforce TELx operational rules, including harvesting information, community maintenance and construction, and inform miners of TELx activities and snapshot vote outcomes. For a proposal to move forward, all 6 council members must participate in a snapshot vote within 5 days of posting, and a 5 of 6 majority is required for approval. Okay, having said all that, and looking at the agenda, we'll move to Andrew now for a short recap. Andrew, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. So just following up on last meeting, looking at action items, we mentioned we were going to monitor the balancer pool volumes and fees over the next couple of weeks and compare against how things were currently looking to assess any risk and exposure based on the hack that had happened in November with Balancer, and then obviously the information that we found out about them kind of, going down and essentially just being a protocol now, being under the control of the DAO. So a few notable things I noticed when looking at the pools. I did see that this was 17 days ago, but there was about 230K removed from the Bitcoin TEL pool on Balancer. With the ETH pool, there was about 15K removed a couple months ago, but then there was also another K added just 3 days ago. There wasn't really anything that I noticed substantially from the USDC side of the pool. So that's a little bit of an update there. Another action item we had too was to draft a proposal to deprecate the USDC EMXN pool and establish one with EUSD instead. I know, Mike, you did post that just before we kind of jumped on, so we can kind of add that to our agenda and kind of review towards the end after, or maybe even as part of kind of like the Uniswap v4 pools or the platform and pool governance. Decision-wise, we did have a few things that we kind of concluded. We did say that we would be meeting with holdings on a regular basis, monthly, to make sure that we're aligned with everything, making sure that we have pools established, everything ready to go. So the next one is actually scheduled for next Monday on the April 20th. So I don't know if we've got confirmation back yet from Paul, Parker, Grant on whether or not they're going to be able to attend that one. But again, I think we mentioned this last time that anytime we get a chance to chat with them for an hour, even if it's only a couple times a year, it's a lot better to have that alignment and communication windows open. Next, we also discussed liquidity on Telcoin network being the focus once mainnet is launched. This is where most of the incentives should be pushed initially, but we also don't want to deter from any other chains, obviously. So we want to make sure that we have a healthy ecosystem and deep liquidity on the other main chains like Ethereum, Polygon, Base, etc. So topics that we also talked about as well. So we talked about the Balancer platform restructuring. Again, I mentioned before about them shutting down to the recent hack. We talked about Merkl integrations. So the latest there was that we had legal formalities being finalized before the minimum 4-week trial implementation. I don't know if Leo jumped on or not, but I'm sure we can provide a little bit of an update as to that. We talked about the data shifting from CSV reports to an API-based reporting system, which makes it essentially in real time. And then we were also exploring whether Merkl can support live distribution of incentives. So similar to the old TELx pools on Balancer, where they would be accruing in real time. And after 5 minutes, essentially, if you refreshed the TELx page, you would see the updated values in your rewards. So I did reach out to Baptiste from Merkl about that, and he did provide a response. He basically said that they are distributed every 8 hours to a claiming portal on Merkl's website, and it's essentially up to the liquidity provider to go and claim at their leisure, but we can integrate this into TELx in the future. So he said he's definitely open to that. We talked about governance alignment and reward strategy. Eric, I think you specifically expressed enthusiasm about multiple initiatives converging testnet progress, unified web presence, alignment with holdings, and showing significant momentum kind of behind the scenes. As I know, a lot of the last couple meetings we've had have been, a little bit of a regurgitation of the same topics, but there is still a lot more going on behind the scenes. And then lastly, we had the pool governance considerations. So rewards are ongoing until otherwise notified through a governance proposal through the forum. And everything right now is funded through the association's annual budget, which was approved at the start of the year. So there's no concerns from that perspective of, whether it's Balancer or anything like that, unless you see a proposal coming forward on the forum. Everything is going to stay as is until you start seeing that happen. And then we talked about the Merkl evaluation, comparing current V4-based rewards against Merkl's multi-parameter approach, where you can incentivize, assets as in like a token A, token B, and then the fees on top of that to achieve a little bit more of a fair distribution, while users needing to subscribe positions to TELx to qualify for either system, essentially. So I know we'll probably further the conversation as we continue today, but that is a quick recap of last meeting.
Okay, thank you so much for that rather extensive recap, Andrew. Cool. And the next, we got a full house, by the way. I was enthusiastic about everything happening behind the screens last time, but you can see it also now, a lot of attendance. Welcome to everybody here. Grant, Leo, I see, Mike, Noah, welcome all. On the agenda, the next item we have is the Uniswap V4 pools and Merkl. I know there's progress on the Merkl side. Leo is there. Do we want to share? Do we feel the need to share anything on the Uniswap V4 pools or the pools in general at this moment?
On the Merkl front, we're just waiting for a signature from Parker, and then should be all systems go. Merkl happy with the contract, as are we. In terms of pools, I think that's a bigger conversation. Do we want to jump straight in, or?
Or we can discuss Merkl also, because it's going to be a test phase for everyone to be sure. Do we have a timeline already, Leo?
Not exactly. Once we get the signature, I think we can kind of get things going. So we might be starting even next week or so. Basically the test will be, we'll have it running in parallel with the current system. So we'll start it on a Wednesday and we'll run it for a week. There won't be it won't actually be distributing rewards, but we'll just have the data that we can compare to the Uniswap, the current hook implementation, basically.
Cool. Yeah. And Ty, go ahead.
Sorry, guys. There was some confusion, wasn't there, over whether or not Merkl would have, or maybe it was just me that was confused, to be honest, but over whether or not they would have it distributed on a per wallet basis or a position basis. So I think from the replies I've seen, but I just would like confirmation, we'll get the data to compare at a position level, but when people claim, the mechanism will be, although there won't be any claiming, but the mechanism would be to go through a portal in Merkl or integrated to TELx, whichever we see has been the easiest initially, obviously on a wallet basis. Is that your understanding, Leo and Grant?
Yeah, so I think actually Merkl will send people to it kind of eventually, if the test all goes well and stuff, we'll integrate it into the TELx website. So the TELx page will basically call them Merkl's API directly. And then people will get their rewards from the TELx page. So people who access the pools via Merkl will actually be sent to the TELx page to claim there. And then the other thing was they, just from kind of an internal accounting perspective, they won't have an API function yet for fee growth, I think. So they won't be outputting that on the API, but that's kind of in the weeds a bit. And we'll have the per position thing, but they won't be giving us the full breakdown, essentially, like the calculations.
Yeah, okay. So just looking at this kind of logistically,
Yeah.
When the contract's signed, and hopefully that'll be done in the next few days, and so we'll be able to start the proof of concept on Wednesday. It would be really good during that time, and I don't know if there's resource capacity on the technical side, but to also dummy up the changes to the TELx side so that we can check that the claims are coming, what the rewards are being visible to the users, and the buttons for claiming kind of all functioning. Is that how everybody else sees it, or are we going to wait until we do our manual evaluation after 4 or 6 or 8 weeks and then trigger the development on the TELx websites?
I'd go for option B there, yeah. I think we'll do the test and we'll see if we're happy with the outputs, and then we'll put in the man hours to integrate it all. Otherwise, we're doing the work before we actually determine whether or not it's a good option.
No, fair enough. So realistically, we're still looking at probably from the start a 3-month period before the actual.
Ty, I wouldn't get too granular with timing. I think we've all remembered how the whole Uniswap, pool audits and all that kind of stuff went. Let's try not to put a timeline on it. The goal right now is to evaluate Merkl as a distribution of rewards protocol that we can use and utilize. So I would align with what Leo said. Let's review kind of how everything goes. Then let's assess, okay, do we actually want to implement? Okay, then let's start talking to Merkl about how we go about that. And then we can continue to go from there. Let's not put the cart before the horse.
No, but I'm just okay. No, I fully agree, Andrew, but I'm just trying to manage probably my own expectations just to get it in my head. Community to say that even although we're doing a proof of concept now, we're not actually going to see this implemented until a few months down the track. And it is in months, it's not in weeks.
Yeah, no, for sure. If anything, to me, timeline-wise, you're probably looking Q3 at this point. Could be later into Q4. I don't know, but let's assess the data that we're getting based on what Merkl's providing, and then let's take it from there, step by step.
Yeah, I agree on this. I think we're all looking for a long-term solution and a good option. So better safe than sorry, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions regarding Merkl? Good job, Leo, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah. If that's it for Merkl, do we have anything on the pools as they are now? I know Ty and Boo, you're more on them than I am. Any strange things we notice or updates on the pools at this moment?
Yeah, so from a pools perspective, what we've been trying to do for the past 2 or 3 weeks is try to look for some short to medium term vision of what we expect the pools to look like. And we've been looking at some of the potential issues that we've got at the moment. And we've come up with an initial plan, which we're going to... Derek, are you able to share that at the moment? The initial spreadsheet that I gave you.
Let's see if we can share it.
If you can share that, that would be great, as I'm using all my monitors at the moment. So we've got a number of issues, and one of the first issues that we've been discussing, and nothing is set in stone, and everything is really up for discussion here, is the fact that should we be in a position where we've got lots of EUSD, EXYZ pools a bit further down the line, we think that the incentives, the limited TEL incentives that we have, are going to be spread a bit thin. So we've been trying to work out whether it should be the TELx Council that provides incentives to these stablecoin asset pairs. So the I'm just reading what you said here. Derek, could you share? I can't find it.
Yeah, I'm trying to show it, but it's not working.
Yeah, it's from Slack in the TELx.
Is it on the TELx Council? I'm just trying to find it as well, but I can share it. But
it's on the TELx Council one, yeah.
Yeah, it's also got a lot of sensitive information on my screen now, and I'm always afraid if I open it, something pops
Okay,
up.
I'll carry on talking. So one of the first things we're worried about is about liquidity being spread too thin, and whether it's the TELx Council that should be doing this anyway. The second thing we're talking about is probably a better use of TEL incentives is really for TEL funded pools only. So where we've got TEL on one side of the asset pair. Yeah, really do that spreadsheet now.
Come on, Ty.
Is it the one, sorry, just to clarify, Boo, is it the one where you sent 3 pictures to the Slack channel?
Today, yes.
Yeah, it's there 8:10 p.m. on my side, by the way. You have it?
Yeah.
That's all. Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, that's fine. So looking at we've just put down 3 chains there. We've discounted Solana for the moment. And what we're finding, specifically with the Uniswap V4 pools, is that they're being ignored by the majority of the large aggregators. We have got some examples where I think one aggregator is using it, but the main ones seem to be avoiding Uniswap V4 pools, and generally that's not good, as you can imagine. So if we take Uniswap V4 out of the equation, we probably still like the idea of Uniswap V3 pools, which is still getting most of the, well, if not all of the aggregators are getting their liquidity from. But we've got occasions where if the TEL price varies significantly, we probably still need V2 pools somewhere to pick up the slack. So what I've put on that spreadsheet there is the major dexes per chain that seem to be used for the main aggregators. So QuickSwap for Polygon, On Base, I've actually said Aerodrome. Aerodrome's got V2 specific pools as well, and on Ethereum, Uniswap V2. So that's all I wanted to say on that. We can come back to that, but as I say, it's quite contentious because we've obviously put a lot of work into the Uniswap v4 pools, but they're being ignored. So we kind of need a solution to that, and whether that's us migrating to Uniswap v3 pools instead, and then we won't have any hooks, of course, or we find another solution. I guess I'll open up the floor now to questions. I think Leo had some comments.
I can kick it off, yeah. My thinking originally was, well, I guess it still is, the issue is that the Uniswap v4 which have hooks attached to them. So aggregators are pulling.
Can you repeat it, Leo?
We just lost you there, Leo. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I don't think the issue is with Uniswap v4 pools. I think it's Uniswap v4 pools with hooks, which kind of makes sense because, and you know, you can make a hook do anything essentially. So you could make a malicious hook very easily. So the aggregators are probably just like blanket. We don't want to touch it if it's got a hook because better safe than sorry kind of thing. So that was my thinking behind maybe there's a route whereby we can get in contact with the aggregators and prove to them that our hook is not malicious. And then those aggregators will see our pools, in which case the V4 pools are just better than V3 pools for our needs. You know, if we're considering V3 pools, V4 pools have the same functionality, except we have the extra infrastructure on top with the hooks, which allows voting and rewards. So if we can get the aggregators to play ball, then I think there's no advantage to V3, basically. That being said, I haven't spoken to any. I don't know how that works, but it should be in their interests, I guess, to be moving that direction. So I think it's worth a try.
On that note, if we, end up going forward with Merkl for reward distribution, like that aspect of the hook becomes null and void, and then really the only thing we need the hook for is for voting. Is that accurate?
Yeah. They might be using the hook to. No, hang on.
I don't think so.
They're not using the hook for the rewards. Yeah, it would just be for voting. Yeah, just in inverted commas.
Can I jump in here with a comment that part of the feedback really from the community, I think, is that employing a hook and attaching it to a position is quite a complicated process for people. And I think there's a resistance to actually using hooks. It adds another layer of complexity to managing your position and setting a range. So I just put that out there that's one of the benefits of V3 is that you just set your position with the range and then forget about it. So I hear what you're saying, Leo, but there is
you're talking about V2, Ty.
Sorry?
I think we were talking about V2 with setting a range and forgetting about it. Or actually, don't set a range. If V3, it requires some management.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But the whole idea of attaching a hook, I think, is probably putting some people off providing liquidity.
It certainly has caught a number of users out where they've tried to do everything directly via Uniswap and not come initially through the TELx site. So I think we've certainly seen positions where people are saying, "Why can't I see anything in the TELx site?" and that's because they've come the other way. They didn't, so the hook address wasn't pre-populated. They didn't know what to provide, so they just added liquidity in the normal Uniswap manner.
Yeah. I think it's also a matter of time. V4 is basically, well, what is it, like more than 1 or 2 years, just around 2 years in usage. So it's not battle tested yet, like other like V3 or well V2 especially. But in my opinion, it might appear a bit complex in the future to use hooks if rewards go through Merkl, and we only have the basically the voting system attached to the hook. But it's yeah, I think time will tell. Yeah. Didn't Paul say something about wanting to talk with aggregators also in our call?
He did, yeah. That maybe we should be engaging directly with Uniswap.
It's a big thing, yeah. It's I don't know if they will do it so easily, because it's I think it's pretty risky for them also still at the time. Well, we'll see. I was just looking at the pools, by the way, because Boo, you said V2, QuickSwap V2.
Yeah,
Uniswap V2, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a couple of options there. The ones that I've put in there, as I said, were the biggest dexes per platform. There is another argument, of course, if we were to ask for these new pools to be set up, of just using Uniswap V2 across the board. It probably wouldn't have quite as much liquidity, but it would be a lot easier to implement, and therefore we'd be more of a Uniswap shop, shall we say, regarding dexes. So has anyone got any comments on that?
I notice that there's no TEL WBTC, which is the biggest pool we've got at the moment on Balancer. Boo, what was your logic there, taking out the TEL WBTC offering?
I'd probably have to ask Andrew to look into it to see just how much transactions are going through that pool. I would have thought there would have been enough routing if we had more liquidity going through the TEL WETH pool to go to other pools to get that asset if it was needed for swaps.
Yeah, that would be my assumption as well. I'm driving right now, but I could look into it later. But or I could look at like historically what the data looks like. But just because something has the highest level TVL doesn't necessarily mean it's the highest traded asset, right? And I think to Boo your point, like that probably the highest tradable asset is probably ETH over Bitcoin. So that's why I think the process was to align with the highest tradable asset being ETH, and then having that stablecoin pair with EUSD as well.
Yeah. Anybody? Anything to add? I'm looking at the V2.
I was just gonna say too, like Ty, from that perspective too, like this is only a suggestion just to try to put an adjusted platform bigger picture thing that we want to put forward. If the community and everybody wants an incentivized TEL Bitcoin pool, then I'm not opposed to that. It's just to what Boo said earlier, right? Like we are a little bit limited in terms of how much funds we have to incentivize these pools, and our North Star, our true goal at the end of the day as a TELx council is to provide the deepest liquidity of the Telcoin token possible. And whether that's on one chain, multiple chains, on the Telcoin network, that doesn't matter. The goal at the end of the day is to provide the deepest liquidity that we have for our asset, the Telcoin token. So however we determine we want to do that, whether it's pairing it with EUSD, whether it's pairing it with ETH, whether it's pairing it with Bitcoin, again, I personally am open to anything and everything. It's just what makes the most sense based on the resources that we have.
I'm also a fan of pairing with wrapped ETH because you can route through it. Just my 2 cents. Sorry, Ty, go on.
No, I was just looking at the TELx pools page, and for TEL USDC, there's 750k TVL and just over 53,000 in volume, and on TEL ETH, there's 530k with just over 18,000 in volume. And for TEL WBC, there's just over 1 million TVL and just over 33k in volume over a 24-hour period. So proportionally, they're all about the same, give or take, margins, small margins.
Yeah. It does surprise me though that there's still so much liquidity in all the pools on Balancer are V2, right?
Yeah, these are all Balancer V2 pools.
Wow. So we got a lot of people who just said I forget in V2 and few V4. Yeah. Surprises me. I thought it was lower.
That was the only option at the time, Eric.
Yeah. I know.
Around for a while before V3 was implemented or anything like that. And again, to what Ty mentioned earlier about the complexity and all that kind of stuff, V2 is a lot easier to go forward with as a retail product, where it's you put the liquidity in, it's a little bit of a set and forget it kind of thing. Obviously, you want to be monitoring your investments on a regular cadence, but everybody's cadence is going to be a little bit different.
Yeah. Well, it is why it surprised me is because when I look at other protocols, V3 is. I heard so much that V3 is basically going to be the structure of the future, and together with V4 and hooks. So it surprises me that V2 is still has this big of TVL and also volume. Oh yeah, the V4 pools, by the way, in Uniswap. If you look at our TELx website, it says volume unavailable. Short notice that I talked with Khalil about this. It's pretty hard to show the numbers on volume because Uniswap doesn't have the top layer on it for us to read out. So Khalil was looking to make it visible in the future, but it was quite some work and also cost to make it happen, I think. So yeah, that on the sideline.
I'd also like to mention quickly, Andrew there mentioned that we want to basically provide as much liquidity, ensure that TEL, the token, is as liquid as possible. So if we're all in agreement that that's what we're optimizing for here, then that should make the V2 versus V4 debate a lot easier. And then we don't need to consider ease of use and stuff. We just look at the balance of V2 TEL wrapped ETH pool versus the Uniswap V4 TEL wrapped ETH pool, and which of those over their lifetimes, I guess, has been more liquid. By liquid, I mean offering the lowest price impact. And there we should have our solution, right? Whether we prefer V2 or V4.
Yeah, I think we got to keep in mind the community's, interests from that perspective as well, right? Like down the road, I think what Boo said too is a good way to look at it. Like, okay, is V3, V4 our primary source of liquidity, and is V2 a good backup, right? So then from that perspective, on a high level, do we take our incentives and push 80% of them towards V3, V4 and 20% of them towards V2? And maybe we do it that way. I get where you're going, Leo. I just want to keep in mind, we got to keep the community's interests in mind in terms of ease of use, right? It's just, we can adjust the amount of liquidity we decide to push where we want it to go. And again, those two different protocols, V2 to V3, are very different, where you have full range versus concentrated. And that's going to be a key player as to why that slippage level is low and why those volumes over time are obviously going to be a lot heavily favored towards V3 because of that low slippage and concentrated liquidity. I just don't want to lose sight from the community's perspective on the retail side of things.
Yeah, agree with you on that, Andrew.
Grant's got his hand up.
Grant, go ahead.
Just want to echo, I agree everything that Andrew just said, and point out that the V4 you can set up with a full range position. So it would basically be virtually identical to the Uniswap V2, but at that point, then it would just support the hooks. But it does sound like we're having issues with like aggregators avoiding the pools because there is a hook in the first place. And the hook is initially added, initially spec'd out just to support voting in general. So as well as reward calculation. So if Merkl is, if that kind of solves that, then, we could look at V4 as well with full range. And at that point, it's going to be the same type of liquidity provision as a Uniswap V2.
I don't think it is, Grant. I think the concept is, but the fee generation is different. So the return, the ROI for a person putting coin into V2 balancer, because no fees are generated if you're outside of a range, even although you've got full range, you're so diluted, then maybe the fees would be less for the same investment.
No, it should mimic exactly. V4 full range behaves the same as V2.
Yeah, no, those are good points. But what we can do from that perspective then too is look at how do we utilize the distribution of rewards from Merkl, right? Remember, we have those parameters where we can incentivize liquidity on token A, token B, and the fees as well. So that should be able to help play around with that. But Ty, it's a great point to call out that if somebody puts in full range into a V4, they're probably not going to get the same amount of rewards as if they put that same liquidity into a V2, because it's being split evenly amongst all of that liquidity.
I was actually not talking about rewards. I was talking about the actual fee generation from within the protocol. I don't think it would be the same, but maybe I'm wrong. I just feel it would be different. I feel it would be less in a V4 full range compared to a V2.
Well, maybe that's part of the test that we do with Merkl. Maybe we as a council put in a few different positions, some being full range, some being, within a range, and then, test to see how that works.
Yeah. Okay, just thought I'd mention it. Thanks.
Yeah, and good call out, Grant, too, by the way, that essentially Uniswap V3, V4 can mimic what a V2 style pool does. So that's a great call out that I forgot about.
Yeah, definitely.
Also, to extend that, I feel like there should be an option if we're worried. If we think of V2 as like a subset, basically of V4, that you can get to the same point using V4, there could be a way that we make a button on the TELx UI that essentially treats a V4 pool as though it's a V2 pool. So like a one-click, don't worry about the range, it's already set to maximum kind of thing, to enable ease of use, because that becomes the only differentiator between V2 and V4.
Is that something we can do on the TELx website though? Because don't you have to provide liquidity on Uniswap and then basically take the NFT? And
I
stake it into
feel like it should be able to be done, but I might need to refer to Chase or.
We could support that, like have a custom, because ultimately it's just crafting generating a call with the ABI to submit a transaction on chain. So that's something that we could add to the TELx front end. It just
The reason we route users through Uniswap currently is because they have a good UI for deciding your range and stuff. If we don't need that functionality, i.e. if someone's going full range automatically, we can just create the call on the TELx front end and call the Uniswap smart contracts.
So from that perspective, would it be possible then, if for whatever reason we decided to go full on partnership with Uniswap, could we then work with them to develop something where everything is essentially done from a UI perspective from the TELx website, and then everything on the background will go into the pools in Uniswap? Essentially negating having to go to Uniswap to actually add liquidity, do the ranges, all that kind of stuff.
You should be able to, I guess in theory we could mimic what they're doing. I don't know what their licenses are, and I don't know what the running costs would be. But
Yeah,
Well,
in
that's what I
theory,
mean. Like
yes.
this would be like a longer term, like strategic partnership to partner with Uniswap to be able to do that. Like obviously in the situation that we have now, I wouldn't expect that they would help us align to get to that point. But if we have a futuristic, long term plan to align with them, I would hope that at least that those working relationships would help us get there.
Yeah, it would be lovely.
I think this
Agreed.
also would fit in with a possible plan for holdings for the future partners, steady partners and steady contracts. So yeah, it is though. I have tried it to put a full range on a V3 and V4, and I can tell you now that the fees and rewards, if they're tied to the fees or the active liquidity, it's basically I'm not going to say zero, but it's it's little, because if the pool is functioning correctly and the liquidity is really concentrated where it should be, if you're spread out all over the range, you got so little liquidity that's actually active in the tick or the range that is where you're in, that it's yeah.
But I
But I think
mean,
that's
I
where
don't
those
think.
parameters from Merkl can come into play.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Also, on that raw example, I don't think you actually achieve anything by having a separate V2 and V4 pool, because it's probably going to get aggregated at some point, and the V4 liquidity will be favored regardless, whether the full range is on V2 or V4, unless people are, putting their settings so they're only going through V2 pool. I think at a higher level, you're going to get diluted regardless.
I think based on what Grant said, like we could almost not have to worry about those V2 pools. If you can get that full range, position within the V3, V4, then okay, well, we might have just eliminated, half of the potential pools that we were thinking of incentivizing, because it's all essentially in one to that point. And then, then maybe we have a little bit more, incentives and rewards to distribute elsewhere.
Yeah.
Or we just increase, the level of incentives in those pools, but whatever. Something more to continue to consider as we, continue to push higher level, longer vision planning.
Hey, on that note, we've been talking Uniswap balancer a bit. Do we have any idea within the community what people are using for protocols and DeFi tools that come in handy? Like, I know Grant, we had a call with Grant last Friday, I think, very short, about a certain platform or protocol, using it for analytics or possible an Explorer. Do we have any idea what our community uses for tools? Like, I use Dex Screener, DeFi Llama on a daily basis almost. Just curious what people are using, because if we're going to build out an ecosystem with pools and everything, really curious what people want to see. Do we have any idea?
DeFi Llama for me.
Yeah. Ty, what are you using?
Maybe we can run a poll and get, because I have no idea. It's probably DeFi Llama for me as well, but I don't use it that often.
What do you think? Should we do a poll on, I don't know, Discord or Telegram, maybe Twitter? X?
I would do all three and then try to get as much data inputs as we can from the community, just because I know some people are on one platform, some are on another, some might be on multiples, but I think the more answers we can get, the better off it'll be.
Okay, cool. Let's do that.
I must admit, my my strategy is to chase tail rewards, so I'm only limited to what TELx produces. You know, I'm not a professional DeFi guy like you, Eric, and I don't.
No. Don't give me any credit. That's you're basically farming Tel. Few.
Yeah. Why not? Why not?
No, I think it would be good to see. Let's see if we can set up something of a poll or anything. Okay. Any more on the pool subjects? We were on. Where's the agenda? We were on.
Will I kill the screen, Boo? Are you finished talking about?
Yeah, I've finished with that. Thanks. I don't need the other images. That's great. Thank you.
Right.
Ah.
So I think there was actually item 4 on the agenda, platform and pool governance review. Unless somebody wants to add anything more.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I only added that to talk about what we just talked about for the last like half an hour. So I think from my perspective, I'm good.
Yeah, cool. Mike, we have you here. I saw you dropped EUSD proposal in our Slack just this afternoon. I think I don't know the time. Do you want to talk about it here or?
Yeah, that was just like in a follow-up to our last meeting, in which, you know, we're the goal is to at this point, now that EUSD is a live product and one-for-one swappable with USDC, to transition the TELx pools over to support TDAB and the issuance of EUSD versus USDC. So the proposal is to just swap over that USDC to EMXN pool to EUSD from USDC, and then to do the same thing as well in conjunction with whatever we decide is sort of the next step in that one. Could be, I think that proposal could go live this week if you guys all think it looks okay. But then to follow on, we would also want to deprecate the current USDC to ETH pool, or USDC to TEL pool, and we'll swap that for EUSD as well, just to start supporting our own ecosystem digital cash.
So if people are in the USDC pool now, they have to switch to EUSD?
For incentives, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, just one thing on that, Mike. Would you be proposing a new balancer V2 pool for that?
No, I don't. I'm not real bullish on balancer. I would at that point, I would as we deprecate balancer and switch to Uniswap, I think that we can do that at the same time.
Yeah, the only reason I brought it up is I thought I read balancer was stopping the creation of new V2 pools as well. So
right.
If you did want to go down that route, we need to look into it.
No, I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I don't know. I'm a little unclear on the future of balancer. I feel pretty confident in the future of Uniswap, and so that's the way I would lean. So that's why I think that it's important to sort of, as we move, once we figure out what the kind of protocol we want to go forth with, in the future, we can then deprecate the balancer pools and set up new pools. We don't want to do that until we're ready, because we don't want to have a liquidity crisis where everybody pulls their liquidity off a balancer, and then we haven't established incentives anywhere else yet. So
yeah.
Can I just jump in and say, I know we talked about this, Mike, like when we had that meeting with Paul, but is this not going on against the current strategy of supporting TEL-based pools?
How do you mean?
Well, Boo's spreadsheet, we're working on the assumption that every pool in the future will be paired against a TEL coin. Yeah. So it's supporting TEL rather than supporting the foreign currency exchanges.
Oh, sure. Yeah, and I see what you're saying. No, I think having liquidity for the TEL token is still a very high priority for us and for this. It wouldn't be doing anything different than what we currently have established from an incentives perspective. the current proposal is just to swap the USDC to Mexican peso pool to EUSD versus USDC. But
we're not talking TEL here, right?
We're not talking about TEL there. And then in the future, pairing TEL in a pool with EUSD versus USDC. So basically just choosing to support the Telcoin Digital Asset Bank digital cash version of the US dollar versus Circle's version of the US dollar. So that's the only suggested improvement.
I would say, like, I think there's nothing wrong with that. Like, long term, like this transition from USDC to USD, I think we're all aligned with that and supporting Telcoin Digital Asset Bank. For me, like, I think, like, bigger picture, like, if we're making all these changes, potentially, you know, again, partnering with a Uniswap, like, I would try to, like, let's do all of this all at once, as opposed to, like, let's do one pool, then let's do another pool, let's do another pool. Like, we can give people enough time to, you know, to migrate over from USDC to EUSD. So to, you know, your point, there isn't a liquidity crunch or any concerns from that perspective. So from that like that perspective, I'm aligned. The other thing that I would mention too, specifically for the EXYZ pools, EXYZ from wherever you're from, would be that, like, I personally would not be opposed to, you know, supporting these initial pools, the stablecoin pools at the onset, for a period of time. Like, I don't think it's on us as a TELx council. Like I said earlier, like, our North Star is really the liquidity of Telcoin, the asset, the token. Obviously, Telcoin Digital Asset Bank is obviously a huge partner of ours, and, you know, part of you know, our big brother, our family. So I don't want to, you know, lose sight of that either. But for me, like, I would love to see, you know, maybe them put a little skin in the game and incentivizing, you know, these kind of pools as well too. So I know we have that that meeting that is scheduled for Monday. Paul, I don't know if he's going to be joining or not. If he is, I think maybe this is a conversation that we can continue with him to get a better understanding and alignment of kind of where their head's at with potentially incentivizing pools. But as, like, you know, new corridors come on and all this kind of stuff for remittances and stuff like that, like, I would totally be aligned for, you know, like a 3-month, 6-month pool incentivization to help get it off the ground and, you know, get that liquidity going. And then after that, like, hopefully there's enough liquidity in the pool where, you know, we don't necessarily need to incentivize it further. And then we can, you know, focus our budget on that North Star of providing the deepest liquidity we can for the TEL asset.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Again, my opinion, like, I'm open to everybody else's opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
That's just the way I think of it.
Yeah. Grant, you got your hand up.
Yes, sorry to be so chatty today, but I love the topics and the groupthink here. So, you know, I just wanted to suggest maybe one other consideration for the councils. You know, the USD and EMXN corridor being one of the largest corridors for remittance in the world, you know, maybe something else to consider could be pairing an EUSD to TEL pool and an EMXN to TEL pool, which routers and aggregators would automatically kind of pick up and route through, which I think could be really lucrative for liquidity providers generating fees. So basically the EUSD EMXN corridor would go through TEL. You know, it doesn't necessarily, and it would also, like, increase availability if just users had just EMXN on that side of the corridor and they wanted exposure to TEL, or vice versa on the EUSD. So something else maybe to consider.
Yeah, I think we talked about that before also. Maybe we should talk this through with Paul, because I think both association and holdings can benefit from pools like that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, great point, Grant. Thanks for being so chatty, Nick. Thank you.
Cool. Okay, we take this with us in our next meeting with Paul. Looking at the time. Oh shit, we got a Q&A still. Q&A, people, please.
Yeah, I've just got one quick one for Leo whilst I remember. We had a user just before you went away, Leo, that may have hit an issue with a maximum number of positions per address. I I think they'd hit something like 82 positions already on one chain. Then they found some more positions with the same address on another chain. Do you think you could look into that when you get some time?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there is a limit to the number of positions. 80 is quite impressive. So I think we were not designing for that, essentially. Block space and lists become quite expensive. So yeah, there are like practical limits basically, and they seem to have found them. I can double check exactly.
Yeah, if you can
what
confirm
those
what
are.
that limit is, then
Yeah,
that's probably all we need to do for that.
cool,
Thank you.
we'll do.
If we do hit that limit, Leo, that's it? No more positions can be rewarded? Is that what you're saying?
I think you can't subscribe another one or something until you remove one, something like that, if I remember correctly.
Are you the
Oh,
one
it's
with the
open
80
positions.
positions?
Sorry, Eric.
Are you the one with the 80 positions, Ty?
No,
it wasn't.
sorry.
It wasn't time.
Boo, are you talking about open positions?
That was what
No.
I was raising my hand about. It's not concurrent positions. It's positions over the lifetime of the wallet. So at some point, if you are adding or removing liquidity or adding or minting a new NFT, you will reach a cap, meaning that you would just need to use a different wallet.
Oh, right. Okay. I understand.
Right. So it's not like they have 80 open positions. It's that they have, over the lifetime of that address, have minted a hook NFT 80 whatever it is times.
Why do we have that to flag it, or?
I haven't looked into it that closely, so that's probably a follow-up. But ideally, I think it probably, I'm just speaking off the cuff, it might have something to do with the way that the hook was designed. I don't know. We'd have to look.
No, I didn't think it was concurrently open positions. That's why I was, but it is feasible over a period of 2 years for normal usage to have opened and closed 80 positions. Yeah. You know, and I didn't realize there was that hard cap where you would have to then switch
I think
wallet address.
Again, I'm making, just based off of some of the code I was looking at, I'm making some assumptions without any verification. So I mean, I think I just wanted to make sure that it's not that the person has 80 positions open at one time. It's that it's that they're 80, they've done, they've had 2 positions open and then they reset it every epoch or whatever, and they've hit that cap.
Yeah, but again, that's not unrealistic to open and close 2 or 3 positions a week. In which case, within a year, you've hit that 80 cap.
Yeah, I don't know what the technical limitations is. Just something to think about. But it's as simple to, and maybe Grant or Leo can speak to it. But it's as simple as just using a different wallet.
Okay. Well, let's wrap it up for that. Because Boo and Leo, you take that one for a follow-up.
Yeah. We'll sort it out between us. Thank you.
We'll take it outside. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. All right. It's almost 1 hour. Q&A. Derek, I think you're the one for that.
There is nothing in the chat right now.
Okay.
No outstanding questions in the chat that I've seen come through.
All right. It's been a good call. So to wrap it up, when is our next meeting? That will be the April 29th. I think that's it, guys. We're here. I want to thank everybody for participating, all listeners, and we'll see you next time. Till then.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.